me ducks, it's Simon here. Welcome back to the Hermit's Cave. How is everybody doing? It's lovely to see so many people here and chatting. As you can see, I'm being joined today by Brian from Blushing Nerd Tarot. So hello and welcome, Brian.
Thanks. Hi, everybody.
How's your day going?
It's going well. I've been reorganizing my space, which is fun. So nice to kind of settle in on everything so that I now have a really comfortable space to be in that I'm not always trying to change around every time I sit down. So really excited to have that settled. Wanted to have it done before popping on the live. So so far so good today.
Yeah, we were just saying before we hit the live button, it's a really striking background. I love the colours, I love the candles and the effect. Because you're in your basement, aren't you? So it doesn't matter whether it's day or night. You can have candles lit, you can have mood lighting and everything else. But it looks a really cool background, a backdrop.
Thanks. Yeah, it feels like there's such great energy down here, and and like you say, being in the basement, I can create the time of day I desire. So anytime I'm doing this, I love to have that warm lighting around me, and just really sets a great mood.
Yeah, it really does. Have you got a lot of space down there?
Yes. A little bit too much. It was kind of daunting when I first started setting up. I wasn't sure how to limit myself. But we are doing some work down in the basement. So I set myself to one corner, and that kind of helped define my limits a little bit.
Cool. So everybody that's here kind of knows the format for catching up with. I've got some questions that I want to ask Brian, and if you've got questions, if you kind of keep them to the latter part, I will put up a little banner that says, if you have questions. So when that goes up, then do put some questions in caps. That would be great. So let's take that one off. Before we start, it's catching up with, but it's also like a time just to sit and have a cuppa. I've got a coffee. What have you got? I just see you take a sip or something. What's your?
Yeah, I have some lapsang tea. So I was in the mood for sort of a pipe smoke beverage today. So that's what I went with today.
Oh wow, what's a cool glass as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's double walled, so it's supposed to maintain some heat. It doesn't do a great job of that, though.
All right. So, yeah. And again, as we were saying just before we went live, you are somebody that seems to have been around for a very long time, but you started your channel a little over a month ago, wasn't it? It was in the middle of June.
Mm-hmm.
I went onto your channel today just to look at when was it, Brian started his channel, and I was just amazed that it was such a short time, because you've packed such a lot in already in such a short space of time. So let's start off just by asking the inspiration behind your channel name, Blushing Nerd Tarot. What was the inspiration for that?
So maybe it was about 2 months ago. It's hard to keep track, because it feels to me like I've been doing this forever too, in some ways. So I'm glad you looked to see how long my channel's been up, because I haven't, and I wouldn't have remembered. But a couple of months ago, you put out that video, may have been as many as 3 months ago now, about I believe one of them was finding the signature on the Fool card, and there was another one that was a sort of a nerd out video, and I loved the vibe, and I too am a fan of the Blushing Fool decks, and although I only have the mini at this point, that's a target for me, and I just started thinking, I was sort of on the edge about just ready to put some content out there, ready to start to dive in, because I wanted to be more active in the community. So it just dawned on me that the Blushing Nerd kind of fit me perfectly, because I love to nerd out on the cards and just about everything, really, if I'm honest. And I also I'm somebody who blushes very easily. And I haven't described that on my channel. I've attributed it all to the blushing fool card. But in reality, if somebody says my name and I'm around other people, I'll turn red. That's just the way I've always been that way since I was a little kid. And it used to be embarrassing to me. And now I just don't care. It's just part of who I am. But it just seemed to fit. And once I thought, and it was, started on those videos from you and just tying it in with that blushing fool. Once I had it pop into my head and I started making some sketches of what I'd want for a logo to tie in with it, it just seemed to be too good.
Yeah, that's reassuring to know, because it was a couple of days ago when you sent me your profile pic, and I was just creating like the banner for it. I started to type Blushing Fool Tarot.
Exactly.
And I was like, no, it's not Blushing Fool Tarot, it's Blushing Nerd Tarot. And I think a few times now I've referred to you as Blushing Fool Tarot. So it's interesting that it has that link to the Blushing Fool deck. So, and that's cool, that name. I love it when you've got a name that can really, bring in aspects of yourself as well, so that's cool. So how did you even find the YouTube tarot community? Did you stumble in it by accident, or how did you even know we were here?
It was really from some intense Googling when I first really started getting into tarot. Um, and, there were some, I was interested more in decks and in walkthroughs and in some uh, interpretations of cards and things like that, less so about the readings that other people were doing. And so naturally, your channel came up in early on in the searches, and it just kind of went from there because of either people you mentioned on your channel or recommendations that would pop up from YouTube, and it just kind of grew from there. But it was mostly just a blind search.
Yeah. And was that just about tarot in general, or a particular deck?
Honestly, I can't remember what my early searches were. I have a feeling it was it may have had a specific deck tied to it, but I didn't have any strong affinity for one deck or another when I first started out. So it may have just been more general, just videos on tarot.
Yeah. And it is interesting, isn't it? Because it's a similar situation to mine. It doesn't happen everywhere. It happens a lot, but I follow like fountain pen channels and lots of, because I've always been a stationery nerd as well, stationery and books and lots of different things. But it wasn't until I started looking at the YouTube videos, because I was looking at decks in particular, that I would hear people start talking about other channels or linking other channels, and then just realizing that everybody seemed to know each other, and that
Right.
was like, what?
Right. I had that same
This
sensation.
how's this
Yeah.
happened on YouTube? But that's cool. So what was your inspiration then so you've told us about your channel name and how you found the TarotTube community. What was your inspiration about starting a channel yourself?
A few things led to that. It sort of built up over time. I watched a lot of content. I mean, I found myself pretty much every time I had a free moment to myself, pulling up YouTube, watching, all of the different channels that I follow, and just I couldn't seem to get enough. So I think that much exposure to anything will eventually drive you to want to participate in a deeper way than just well, and maybe not everybody. That's just I tend to geek out a little excessively on things. So it definitely got to a point where I felt like participating in chat maybe wasn't quite enough for me anymore. So what else can I do? And so that was one motivation. Another motivation was just seeing some other new channels pop up, and being inspired by some of the content they were putting out early on, and just it gave me the feeling that, you know, maybe I could get over a little bit of that imposter syndrome and put some stuff out there myself.
Yeah, and I'm glad you did, because your content is great, as I said, and you just seem to hit the ground running. And like I was saying at the start, you know, for just 4 or 5 weeks in, the stuff that you're covering. Well, in fact, you tell us if somebody's here in the live today, listening in, and they're going to click on the subscribe button to your channel, what can they expect? What sort of content have you got out there, going to be putting out there?
Yeah, a couple of things that I've done. You know, there's because I'm a little well, I'm early in the game. I can't say late to the game because there's always more stuff coming out,
Mm.
and more content to be made. But I'm early in the process for myself. So one of the things I decided to do, if I was going to do a walkthrough that I know was already done on a lot of different channels, I thought about, you know, a little twist on it might be to do some sort of test drive of the deck. So to do a light walkthrough, because you know, maybe everybody's seen the deck already, but then to put it to application and just put some cards down from the deck and talk about what I see and how I interpret that particular deck's imagery and things like that. Maybe use the guidebook if it has one, to draw out some additional information. So deck test drives, that's one of the things I like to do. I just yesterday put out the first episode in Tarot Nerd Out videos, which will be kind of a deep dive into cards, you know, with RWS as the centerpiece, but then expanding from there. You know, with each of the cards, you know, before an episode comes out, I'll roll the die and come up with a number from the majors, and I may go into the minors eventually too. Yeah, I just pull up the card, and the first one was the High Priestess, and I just research it, look into as much information as I can find, put it out there in video format, and yeah, go from there. So.
Yeah, and that went up yesterday, didn't it?
Yes, yeah, it's a new one. So.
It's in my watch to watch later, because end of the year working in academia, like I do, it's pretty full on, and today's like the first day of kind of breathe out. But yeah, I'm really interested in looking at that, and I think actually I've got it. Have I? Yes, got it here. The first video you ever did, and it's interesting because a lot of people who I've chatted to over the years will often say similar to what you said, which is, well, you know, people have already shown a deck, and I don't want to just show a deck. But if there's something that I'm interested in, I'll watch so many different walkthroughs of the same deck, because everybody's opinions are different. Everybody notices different things. But even your first video was of this deck, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Synchronicity.
I've never seen this before, and I'm not a huge Oracle lover, but this, and I just grabbed it now, is on the table next to where I sit, because it's such a cool concept, and I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for that. But again, you know, it's always interesting, I think, when content creators, even if, you know, it's the 100th showing of, I don't know, think of a popular deck, Lightseers.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a deck that I want, I will still watch it. If it's somebody's whose opinion I've always, you know, thought, oh, I really like how they look at decks, or you know, their views on it. So yeah, I'm glad you're another voice within the community. Beth says, I agree, Simon. Different people always bring something new to the table with flip throughs, and especially walkthroughs. Yeah, definitely. And Deanne, hello, Deanne, says, Brian and Simon made me do it. The Oracle. Yeah, but again, that's an example, isn't it? That Deanne's watched 2 different content creators before purchasing a deck. So it's exactly as I was saying. And hello to everybody else as well. Sandra says she loves watching different walkthroughs of the same deck. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just decks, you know, again, pens or stationery. If I see something, I'll watch dozens of videos about this one thing before before I decide to buy. Unless, you know, you see something and instantly just know I've got to
Right.
get that, you know, and you might only be up to the, I don't know, the hermit card before you've hit the buy button. But that's
Exactly. Yeah. And in some cases, you hit the buy button and you turn off the video for now until it arrives, and you can look through it yourself and then go back and play the rest of
yeah,
the video. Because I do like to, every once in a while, I don't want to spoil surprises if it's something I know I'm going to click with.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm the same. Or if for me as well, it's if a deck creator contacts me and says, "Can I send you this
Mm,
my deck? Here's a few images," because I always insist on seeing them because
yeah.
I'm not going to be somebody who's going to review a deck and be unfair to them, because
Right.
whatever my opinion is, it's their work, and
Mhm.
for them that's, you know, that's sacred to them.
Absolutely.
And so they'll send some images, and then I think, yeah, actually that's really nice. I think that would be great. Um, and then while I'm waiting for it, I will see videos popping up, but I won't watch it because I
Yeah.
know it's coming, you know. But if it's
Absolutely.
something I'm going to spend money on, I do tend to watch quite a few. But
Definitely.
so tell us a little bit about yourself then, Brian, as in, you know, where did you grow up? Were there spiritual influences as you were growing up? And what eventually led you into the path of tarot or divination?
Yeah. So this is always one of my favorite sections to watch on your catching up with videos, because I love to hear everybody's background story on their spiritual journey. And I think a lot of people start out the same way. There's some sort of organized religion at the base, and that because a lot of us, and maybe it's generational or something, but I know for me growing up in the 80s, everybody went to church, and that's and I was no different. You know, that was we went to a Protestant church, and we were fairly active. You know, it was in terms of just being there weekly, and it was just a big part of my life. And you know, I had the fortunate. Well, I was lucky in the first church that I went to as a kid had a great history, and we're not blessed with some ancient stuff here in the States, but we have some things that are old and sacred. And I was lucky enough to go to one of those churches that was old and sacred, just this big stone behemoth that had oodles of history, and was beautiful in and of itself. Um, and and I felt a connection to spirit in that place, that I found other times in my life, but I did not feel it for the religion. I felt it outside of the religion. And one of the ways that manifested was there was actually a tunnel in the basement of this church that was put there for the Underground Railroad. And we found it. Meaning my brother and a few of our friends, we were just, you know, bored and nosing around. Our parents had meetings or something at the church, and we were just kind of playing around. And in a storage area, we were able to find that there was sort of a hollow spot in the floor with some plywood planks over it. So we slid them off to the side. We were adventurous buggers, let me tell you. It was it was pretty wild. So we moved the things aside, and we found a dirt set of steps that went down to a tunnel. And we were later told by people that knew the church and the church history really well that this was actually part of a tunnel system that was built in our town for the Underground Railroad, for slaves that were fleeing the South. And they were given a place to rest. They were given food, and the tunnel actually connected our church to another church that was a block away. So it was a massive tunnel, considering it was probably dug by hand back in the 1800s. And it actually had dirt benches built along the sides all the way down. So you can just imagine the number of people that would have been in this thing. And while I was in there, I felt for the first time in my life, I felt a really strong presence, and I didn't know how to put words to it or explain it when I was a kid, but it stuck with me ever since. And then, over time, we would go to different churches, and I would occasionally feel that same connection to spirit, particularly when I would go to places like church camps. So I was out in nature. I'd be there for a week, and just would, I don't know, I just felt such a connection, but I never felt the connection to the religion. So it never quite added up for me. And it wasn't until I was an adult, that I realized that there's a reason why, for me, the religious connection wasn't the thing. It was the connection to spirit that I just didn't have the right terminology for, the right experience for. Um, so I put it down. I put it away for a while, and I almost denied that connection for years, until I realized that there was a legitimate way to connect with that outside of organized religion. And for me, organized religion often meant politics and guilt. And
Absolutely.
and that was the part that, it turns out, that's what was separating me from any kind of meaningful connection, and making it feel dissonant, that I here I am in this place where I feel a spiritual connection, but I also feel this opposition to some force that just didn't jive. It just didn't feel right. So, fast forward, and all throughout my adult life, it's been peppered with these experiences that felt so genuine and so connected, and then all of the sudden, tarot pops into my life, and my wife does a good job of describing it, is that it's sort of acknowledging and accepting that connection felt like coming home, like nothing else I've ever experienced. And and it's been so significant and so powerful in my life, in a relatively short amount of time, that I actually have to think, how long have I been in this? And I can't, and how it feels like forever, but it really has been a short amount of time. And so it's just been amazing. And I've never been able to feel this type of connection to a community before, and I feel like it's just um, it's you know it's been incredible. So, and I'm very thankful for the community for
That,
that.
that's and that's wonderful to hear. We'll come on a little bit more about that, how tarot came into your life. But I just wanted to say, because you articulated that so beautifully, and there was resonance of it, because as somebody who was part of a church as well, what you said about connecting with spirit as opposed to being religious and following a religion. For me, I just think there's a vacuous, huge void between religion and spirituality.
Yes.
Because, I went with a friend, well, a work colleague who's a friend, just a couple of weeks ago into a Catholic church, and I connected with spirit,
Yes.
and but that connection to spirit can happen if I go to Monsell Head in the Derbyshire Dales and look out across the landscape, or if I'm at the side of the ocean, or if I listen to a piece of incredible music, we can connect to spirit um, in a church, or in a woodland area, can't we? And that's the difference. And as you said so eloquently there about how religion is connected to people and politics and dogma and everything else, that's, for me, that's just noise, and that gets in the way, really, of that connection, that stirring inside that we get when we're faced with something that we're in awe of. So
It
thank you
does.
for that.
Yeah, and there were a couple of times, and I mentioned church camp. That was a thing that's very common, in the States, with certain churches, to have the summer getaway, and they would have these camps that were sort of themed around different topics, but it would just go to the general week long church camp, and during that time, I had some really fantastic camp counselors. I eventually became one myself because they were a crew that I think they acknowledged fully that they were there for spirit, not for the religion. And it was incredible. We
Mm,
would lay out under the stars for hours at night and just talk about the vastness of space.
mm,
And it was so dark there, we would see satellites passing over. It was incredible. And then we would have these ceremonies down at a pond where we'd light candles and put them out in the pond. And it was a practice of letting things go, or wishing, or different things that were really had nothing to do with the religion, and they were spiritual practices that were more aligned with paganism
mm,
than with anything else. And even to the point where we would have a vespers at night, which is basically we just sit at a campfire and we would talk and we would sing songs and do things like that. But at
yeah.
the end of the week, every week, there were a few of us, and we got this tip from the person who organized the camp. They said, you know what, take a salt shaker from the what we called the skipper, which was the place where we ate our meals, fill it with ashes from that fire and keep it with you, and that will serve as a reminder for the memories you've formed and the bonds you've formed here with people. It was so powerful. It still gives me chills. It brings tears to my eyes, because but that's not something you would ever hear in a Protestant or Catholic church. It's so far against. So those were the kind of things that I was blessed with, just to have those experiences to really keep me tied in with a spiritual connection, with a connection with Mother Earth and everything else. It was incredible. So
That's wonderful. Yeah, I just noticed a couple of comments pop up as well. So, okay, so I went to Bible study as a child. In the summers, held on my neighbour's veranda. My life has changed so much as an adult as far as my path goes, but it's lovely to have those fond memories. Exactly.
absolutely.
And if those memories are, fond, as you say, and they do have that impact, then they not only have an impact, but they leave an imprint, don't they? And that takes us through into our adult lives as well. So, and I think Deanne said something. She said, "Yeah, that's pretty much how my camp experience was," which
Yeah.
is great. So then you said that, and then tarot came into your life. So how did tarot come into your life, and when was that?
So this is where the imposter syndrome part in me comes out, because it was, I believe, and again, I still have to think about this because it feels like a lot longer, but I believe it was about a year ago. And it was my neighbor, who, unbeknownst to me, had been into tarot for quite a while, and we've been friends for a long time. But it was a Saturday morning, and my wife was drinking coffee over there in their kitchen, and they were just talking, and she had some tarot cards out, but I just wandered over with my cup of coffee and sat down at the table, and there's this deck of cards and a book, and I felt this immense presence that just, there was a buzz in the air, unlike anything I had felt for a very long time. And I just had this intense draw to the cards, and I had a reverence for them so much that I didn't really want to touch them. And it was a deck that really wasn't my style. The artwork didn't even appeal to me. So it was almost even more powerful given that, because this is not a deck that I would buy. It's just not a thing for me, um, but still the mystique, it just had such a powerful draw for me that I started Googling things while I was sitting at that table. And I don't remember the rest of that day, because I think I was just trying my hardest to find, where could I get something now? I wanted a deck today, and I didn't even know that Barnes and Noble and places like that carried decks. So I didn't know that I could just drive down the street and get something. So it was just such an intense draw, and I couldn't solve that fast enough. But that's how it all started, and the rest is history.
Can I ask them why you said that's why you feel that that's imposter syndrome? Is that because of how relatively new your experiences
Mhm.
are? Why imposter syndrome?
Well, and that's it. It's because it is so so new, and our community is full of people that have been doing this for 15, 20, 30 years even. So I tend to be one of those people that likes to be an expert on something the first time I pick it up, which is a terrible flaw to have, because then it makes me feel like if I pick it up and I'm not an expert right away, that there's something wrong, that I haven't done it right. So, so it is, and it's not a comment to others in the community, because everybody is always encouraging and very welcoming of new people. It's just an internal thing that makes me feel that way. But yeah, I feel like, because inside I feel like I've been doing it for 20 years, but outside I certainly have not. So
Yeah, and I mean, I can't speak for everybody in the community, but I'm sure, most people would agree with me that actually new voices in the people that are coming to the tarot and sharing their experiences, and relatively newbies, have so much to give, that I suppose, if we might have been reading for quite a long time, it can be really refreshing,
mm,
actually, to hear somebody who has a fresh perspective, or is, even if there's been people over the last few years that I've interviewed where they've literally only picked up a deck in the last few months and haven't learnt the meanings.
mm,
They're just going on, intuitive hits, and that is mind blowing. So, but I do understand imposter syndrome. The first reading I ever bought was off Kelly at The Truth is Story, and it
mm,
was about dealing with imposter syndrome, was my question, which was linked to work because of the situation I found myself in, being
mm.
promoted to something that I didn't feel I was ready for. And imposter syndrome is a real thing.
Yeah,
But
it is.
rest assured, within this community, I can guarantee I don't think anybody would look at somebody based on their longevity of working with tarot, because that's the beauty of tarot. It's so flexible in as, yeah, there will be tarot scholars out there, but there'll be people who never looked at a book and just read them intuitively, or somebody who will have
Mm.
completely different ways of coming to it and reading cards. Um, so yeah, I hope, and that's something I love about your channel, is that you're coming to it and you're very honest and you're very open, and you'll just say what you think, and that's to be admired. Can you remember what that first deck was that the lady had at the table, and they said it wasn't your style? Or
I think I can find out relatively quickly. I haven't even committed to memory, because it's not my style. It's not something that I would go to, but I think I have it, because I had to ask. Actually, I had to ask my neighbor recently when somebody else asked me. Um, so let me see if I can dig that up real quick. It was one of those, sort of a medieval style to the deck, and
medieval style.
yeah,
Is it a mass
goodness,
mass market
yeah,
one?
it's
Like
definitely
maybe
mass market.
Gapini, or there's quite a few
Mm,
medieval ties, but
there
don't worry if
there
it
are.
doesn't. Oh, you
Yeah,
got
I'll see if I can dig it up, but
yeah.
it's even in my chat in one of my videos, because it came up as a question. So
So did you then go down to Barnes and Noble and buy one, or did you buy one online? And what deck was it?
so I went to a local metaphysical shop that I had never been to before. Was very excited to find it, and I got, the first one I got was the I have it over here. Uh, hmm, well, I thought I did. Tarot of Mystical Moments was one of my first. I think that was my second one. Um, oh, here we go. It was the Ethereal Visions, that I picked up first.
Wow.
So, um, and it was funny because I didn't I didn't know about, I didn't know about systems. I didn't know about, I had of course I recognized the imagery from the RWS, and but I right from the start was kind of, a geek for the aesthetic, and I was hoping for a certain feel in the card stock, and I don't even know where that came from because it's not like I was exposed to much, but I don't know. I really was looking for a certain feel, and I couldn't open the box or anything. I couldn't take a look at the images, but I really liked that Art Nouveau style. And I haven't really worked. It turns out I haven't worked with that deck. But
Really?
yeah, but because I immediately picked up, I got the Centennial Edition, and that was really the first deck I got of RWS that was the first deck I worked with. So
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of controversy about that deck when it first come out, all to do with Kickstarter and timing and US Games picking it up and everything else. But I spoke to Matt, the creator. We had quite a lot of exchange back then, and he sent me one of the, which I've still got actually. I gave my mass market one away to Sandra, I believe. And I kept the original, and there's absolutely no difference between.
oh
I understood people's frustrations, but it is a beautiful, beautiful deck.
it is. Yeah.
So obviously that was just over a year ago. Have you been bitten by the tarot bug? Have you purchased many decks since Ethereal Vision? You're nodding along.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
So
definitely.
how have your taste changed then since your first deck to perhaps your last deck?
Yeah, good question. Actually, one thing that I started doing was buying some Marseille decks, and I didn't see myself going down that path early on. But I've really enjoyed some of the Artisan Tarot decks, the Dodal and the
Yeah.
Noble. So that's something that evolved over time. Um, Also, Oracle decks have become more of an interest in, um, because of the way that they can enhance readings and also as standalone. Um, that was something that evolved over time, but I really did. I was really bitten by the RWS bug, and I like the vintage decks. I do. I really like this '70s yellow box. I have a few no copyright versions, but it seems like throughout this year, I would watch some of the just videos that were only a couple of years old. I think it's Brant that does some videos on finding those, um, the yeah, the different versions, the different copyright dates or addresses for US games to identify different versions. um, and at the time it was like, oh yeah, you can get a no copyright RWS for about $40, and that is not the case anymore. Let me tell
Not
you.
anymore.
That is drastically changed. So
Thanks to
um
this community.
yeah. Yeah. So I have the saved searches on eBay, and I'm able to pick up some here and there, but um yeah. But so I'm kind of split. I really enjoy indie decks, and I really enjoy the old RWS. So I kind of go down both paths, and that all developed fairly quickly within a few months. And after working with a few decks, then I really realized what lanes I liked to be in.
Yeah.
Um,
So would you, even though you like to kind of inject, would you say you've got a preference over systems? And would that be RWS
mhm.
or Marseille? You haven't mentioned Thoth. Have you gone the way of Thoth?
I have not. I don't have a Thoth deck. It's maybe at some point I will. I don't know. It's probably one of those things like anything else. Sometimes I have an idea in mind of how I'm going to feel about something, but then
Mm,
for some reason I'll pick up the deck or I'll buy a version, and then all of a sudden I'm hooked, or it appeals to me in a different way. Or it could go the other way too. Sometimes I see something online that I think is going to be amazing, and I get it in my hands and I'm just not clicking with it. So I don't know which way it'll go with Thoth, if it does at some point, but I'm open minded to it. I just don't have that experience yet. But in terms of systems, I do tend to find RWS to be the most appealing for readings for myself, for study deck, learning meanings, things like that. I found that I really enjoy doing readings for other people with Marseille.
Okay.
Um, I feel a flow with that I don't always get with RWS. So it's kind of a weird thing. It still remains to be seen if that'll continue, but that does seem to be the case right now.
I get, and that's really interesting because there was a discussion last night about, I can't remember who's live now. There was a few last night, but it was talking about Marseille in particular, and how some people find them challenging or go blank when they see pip cards. But sometimes it can really open it up, can't it? Depending on what you're reading about, what the querent's question is, because when you're confined to an image, even though you're not, when I say confined, there's still other directions you can go in. But when you've got that image there and you're reading from someone else and they can see that image, particularly with the people I've read for in the past, if it's something like, I don't know, the Nine of Swords, and they've said, oh yeah, that's me, that is, it's been on my mind and I'm getting no sleep and everything else. And you're within that image. Whereas if you've got nine swords, then you can, start talking about attainment and thoughts, mind, intellect, and everything else. And there's no kind of parameters from the image. However, that said, I think I'm opposite, because when I read for people, I always read RWS. Whereas for myself, I will read Marseille.
Yeah.
Or I should say, when I read Marseille, it's usually just for myself. But so that's really interesting. Is that similar for you? Not having that restriction of an image. Is that why?
Yeah, that's part of it. Although I do find myself thinking of the RWS card, the equivalent, when I'm reading Marseille. That image will pop into my mind and it informs how I think about it. But I also like just thinking about the archetypal standards for the different suits and to some extent the numerological elements when reading Marseille. So I'm not sure where that comes from, but it does seem to, it's almost counterintuitive because it feels like my mind is doing four different things at once. So it shouldn't be as much of a flow, but somehow it is.
Yeah. And what about certain cards? Do you have favorite cards within the tarot, or ones that you would perhaps look out for when choosing a deck that you want to buy?
Yeah, I do look at the Hermit card a lot. Um, I do like the Empress card or the High Priestess card. Both the Empress and High Priestess are cards that I feel like in the RWS they're packed with so much symbolism, and some symbolism that resonates with me, so that when I see those in other decks, sometimes it'll just click and I just think, okay, this is something I can probably guess that if the artist took it this direction, the creator thought this way about it, the rest of the deck will probably follow. So sometimes they can be indicators for me.
Yeah, that's cool. I just wanted to clarify as well. Sorry, Layla. Oh no, sorry, wrong one. It just jumped then. Okay. So just to clarify, I do read RWS for myself, probably 60-70% of the time. I will sometimes bring in Marseille. What I meant was, when I'm reading for other people, I will always use RWS. And Marseille I only use for myself, but not exclusively. So that's really interesting. And have you found a significator card yet? Is there a card in the tarot that you feel is a card that represents you, and you would use that as a significator in a reading?
Yeah, I have leaned toward, and this is something I didn't really explore until recently, um, mostly because I didn't feel a draw necessarily in one direction. Um, the cups suit is one that I always feel lines up with me. Just the emotion. That's just I've always worn my heart on my sleeve. It's just the way I've always been. Um, and I feel like I could almost change depending on the day or week, had a lot going on in my life personally lately, and I've definitely felt sort of I've had to take a leadership role in some difficult things that have been going on, and but very emotional at the same time. So there's been sort of a King of Cups or Knight of Cups vibe going on, and but Page of Cups has actually been, and I know that's one for you. And honestly, I've just connected with that. It just feels like the spirit that I have, that um, I have an inherent vulnerability that is both a problem point for me personally sometimes, but also I think can be a great asset. And I think owning that sense of Page of Cups has been it's been a nice process.
Yeah. And that's uncanny, Brian, because very similar to me in the early days, I knew that I connected with the water element. And I've done videos about it because I used to think, from my limited knowledge of astrology, there was very little water in my natal chart and things like that. But it turns out that there is some. And I used to go between the courts in this, because I knew it was cups, and I used to go between the courts, and I used to think, yeah, there's elements of the king, there's elements of the queen, and oh yeah, well, at times I can be like the knight. But it was reading about the page that I thought, actually, and a lot of people who have significator cards, if they're female, will go with the queen of, and males will go with the king of.
Mm.
And I thought, well, am I selling myself short saying that I'm this is the kind of. But then it was when I did my Myers-Briggs personality type that
Mhm.
it gave me that 4 letters, and then I mapped it to the tarot, and there it was, Page of Cups. And I thought, well, yeah, that's definitely where I am then. Are there any cards you find particularly challenging?
There are a few. I think probably initially one that comes to mind actually is the Nine of Cups. The reason I find it challenging is actually because of the imagery in the RWS. Um, I feel like for me, when I see that card, I see a sense of isolation, and someone who, although um, has that collection of cups behind them, has a look of being unbalanced, just sort of this there sure there's this completeness in this wall behind them, but what is that really doing? That's isolating them from maybe what gave them the cups, what brings them all of that. So that one I really struggle with. So I find that every time I kind of trip up on it, and I struggle because I want to find that meaning that is a common theme in all of the little white books and everything else. But what comes to me when I see that card in a reading is different.
Yeah,
So that's one that I struggle with for sure.
almost like a disconnect. Whenever I turn that card, the first words that come to my mind is always count your blessings,
Mhm.
but sometimes you just have to turn around and see what you've got. We're not
Yeah.
always, and it's very much there, isn't it, cut off from it. But yeah, count your blessings. So do you believe in the concept of soul decks? And if so, do you have a soul deck, Brian?
I do. I do. I believe in that. I believe, first and foremost, I believe that I could never deny that, just because to each their own. And if they have that experience, then who am I to say otherwise? But I also believe it because I've had that experience. I've had that feeling. Pagan Otherworlds is probably as close as I've come. Um, I instantly fell in love with that deck, and could just and have regularly just kept it nearby, just because I found myself needing to just shuffle it and be near it and to look at the images and things like that. And I just think it's a powerful thing for me. So
it's exquisite. That's the only way I can describe it. You know, everything about it, the size, the quality cardstock is perfection, but the detail, and it's like you're holding a classic, isn't it? Even though it's quite recent, the art style is beautiful. And I used to have a wall hanging, and that was my favorite one to display on the wall, because when they're all laid out, it's exquisite, absolutely beautiful deck. So yeah, I haven't picked it up for quite some time. It is on my desk in a special pouch that Kelly made for me, because it's a treasured deck, and it's one I have a backup for as well. But yeah, it doesn't get the attention I think it deserves. You know, it's gone quiet on the kind of pagan otherworlds front, but which is a shame, because it is, like I say, it's beautiful. And what's currently at the top of your wish list?
I definitely want to get one each of a blue box blushing fool. I almost said blushing nerd, and I do it all the time myself.
You'll be forgiven.
So I want to get a blue box and a yellow box, and like I said, right now I have the mini, but one of each of those is top of my list. So I keep waiting for that opportunity to pop up.
I know this community. I think you've probably heard me say before, the first blue box I ever bought was £30.
Oh,
I don't think the seller knew what it was, but then it wasn't really discussed as much back then. Then we all started talking about the blushing fool, and everybody wanted the blushing fool. And then my second one that I bought was £100. So the jump, and that was my limit, you know. And you mentioned Brant from Moon Baby. I traded one of my blue box blushing fools for a yellow box blushing fool.
Oh yeah,
because then we both had one each.
Right.
He'd got 2 yellow box blushing fools. I'd got 2 blue boxes, so it made sense. But having them in my hands, the blue box edges just a little bit better. It's less silky and it's more matte and soft. But I mean, whichever you can get is great.
Yeah.
So would you say that's your unicorn deck? Is that the one that you really want above all else, but just seems unobtainable, or is there another deck that's a unicorn deck for you?
I don't feel like that's a unicorn, because I think it is within reach, because I think at some point that opportunity is going to come up, and I'll take it. But for me, the unicorn deck is as yet undefined, I think, because I feel a sense of a deck that I have a strong desire for, but I have not seen it yet. And there are some decks that come close. But one that you've mentioned before, that sort of like that pinnacle of RWS, if you could have the right card stock, the right, just all of those elements kind of come together for the right RWS. Why that hasn't happened yet is beyond me. I don't know. And I've even thought about I have some people that I know in the publishing world, and I thought about trying to make that come to fruition, to see if you could get the right combination of printer and all of those things together. But I'm not sure what the licensing is like and everything else on that. But regardless, that's one that I feel like is kind of a unicorn, because it doesn't exist yet. I want somebody to get on that and create it.
Yeah.
And there is an aesthetic. There's something out there, the oak, ash, and thorn card stock and art style is amazing and gorgeous. And that gets almost there, but it's in my hands, so it's not one that's a unicorn, but there's some sort of magical combination that's out there that it just hasn't come to fruition yet. And I'm waiting for it. So I don't have a good definition for unicorn right now. But I have a feeling in my heart that it's out there. So yes, I have a unicorn deck. I don't know what it is.
I agree. And if I can just kind of like hijack the chat just for a minute, because last week US Games subscribed to my channel. So if US Games are watching this right now, create it.
Yes.
They're the ones who claim to have all the copyright still for the RWS.
Mhm.
Create it. Matte cardstock, no copyright on the front. Beautiful gilding, crackle backs, close to the PAME, thicker cardstock like it was originally in 1910. Then yeah,
With a
please.
nice core that has some springiness to
Yeah,
it, but has heft, and yes, they're just a good saturation on the color, but accurate to that PMA, as much as possible. It
absolutely.
it
It
can
would
be done,
fly
and
out, especially within this community. Like you say, I don't know why they haven't. They've come close with things. They did the Pamela Colmer Smith, and
mm,
with the gold gilding, but then it was really thick gloss and backs that were
mm.
green and gold. And we want the traditional deck, the historic deck, but accessible again now. It's not a lot to ask, I don't
It's
think.
really not, come on. And we'll pay for it, that's the other thing. Don't be
Yeah,
afraid to price it appropriately. If it costs a lot to make the deck, then charge a little more than the average. I mean, we're not saying, like, you can charge whatever you want for it. It's obviously we want it to be successful so that it can be available to everyone. But don't assume, that people are only going to pay £12 for it, or $18, or whatever the case may be. Put a decent price tag on it that's fair for the material you're putting out, and we will buy it as a community.
yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So, can I ask you, Brian, how do you work with the tarot? Do you use the tarot for divinatory purposes? Do you use it for introspection, or development, personal development? How do you work with the tarot?
I would say it's a mix. There are, and it's highly dependent on the question I'm bringing, or if I'm pulling cards for somebody else, the question they're bringing in. Um, if it is just to get an idea of what is ahead for me for the day, um, or if I have a project that I'm working on, I really do like the conceptual blending concept. I like to think of, or to use tarot and oracle as a tool for breaking up creative blocks, and that I don't see as divination. I see that as more of a way to keep the mental juices flowing, and to get, maybe to bring some stagnation, out, and expose it and get rid of it. So I use it for all of the above. I find it to be an incredibly powerful tool for self-help. I also, when reading sometimes for others, I've found it to be powerful enough doing that it brings tears to my eyes sometimes, the way those cards, when I put them down and think about it in terms of the question that the querent has. I just can't believe sometimes how they come out.
Yeah,
And that connection, I feel like is just amazing. So it's, there isn't a way yet that I found to use tarot that I don't connect with.
yeah,
So
and
all of
that's
the above.
yeah, and that's great that you can use it in all those kind of multifaceted ways. Um, And have you got any kind of theories on how tarot works? I always like to hear, kind of people's views or opinions, and well, yeah, I'll ask you first before I carry on with what I was going to say.
Well, basically, I think the fact that it's so well designed and so ancient, even though it started out as a card game, um, it's so tied to humanity in our different archetypes and everything, that it almost can't help but make that connection, um, for us internally, and externally, as if there's, a greater force at work. Um, and I think that's the magic of it, is that it is, when people describe it as a mirror, I think it is a mirror for the human experience, and for something that is that tied in to us as a species, it's hard to not have that magic come out of the cards. It's hard to not have that experience, because we're able to put a few things down and connect with it because we recognize something about that archetype, whatever the card may be that goes down. We recognize in ourselves that little piece that makes that connection. And then when we see that in concert, when we have all of the cards out for a given spread, or whether it's 3 cards or a Celtic cross or what have you, um, when we start to get the tingles because we see those connections come out, and we can apply it to something that's been maybe heavy on our minds or something. I think it all comes down to the fact that these cards tie into us and our experience as human beings, however we classify ourselves. And I think humanity is a broad spectrum, and I love that. I love that tarot can connect with anyone in that broad spectrum and bring us all to a single place. And that's one of the most beautiful things about tarot, and it's one of the beautiful things about this community that keeps me coming back every day and inspired me to get involved, just because that's where the magic is.
Absolutely. Couldn't put it any better than what you said. And I like asking that question, and I like hearing people's views, because I still, after all these years, find myself in conflict of whether it's within or without, because, and I think it can be both. And I think that's what I've come to, is that I do believe there's a reservoir of untapped knowledge within each of us. And when we draw the tarot, even if we're looking at our future, we can perhaps, deep down in our psyche, know the journey that we're going on and what the pitfalls might be. And the tarot can help us to see that. Mm-hmm. But then I'm in conflict because I'm also having a conversation with something outside of myself where I'm saying, seriously, and I've kind of disassociated myself, and I'm connecting it to something greater, having an influence. So I've always had that sort of that battle of whether it's within or without. Mm-hmm. And I really do think I'm getting to the point where it's more than that, because there isn't a separateness between ourselves and everything else. Everything is interconnected. But we've just passed the hour point. Are you still all right for time, Brian?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm going to pop up the, and I think I saw some questions coming up anyway. I'm going to carry on asking questions. But if you do have questions for Brian, please pop them in capitals, and I'll try and catch them. So a few questions that I like to kind of round up with. Are you much of a book reader?
Yes.
What's your favorite book, tarot and non-tarot?
Tarot, probably my favorite book so far is Holistic Tarot by Benabel Wen.
That's a poem.
It is, and I think that might be part of why I like it. It's not a cover to cover read for me. It is, ooh, I'm interested in this topic, let me pick that up and read that chapter, that sort of things. But I love to have, it's almost a library within a book. So I like to just pick it up and read it. Not, just pick a chapter and go.
Yeah.
So it's really fun that way.
It's certainly not a cover, from front cover to back cover read, is it?
No, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
But outside of tarot books, I do like classic literature. I like Hawthorne and some of the 19th century authors. I collect some books from that era. We have a fairly large collection of books, and I read from all genres. I like fantasy. I like, like some science fiction. Thomas Pynchon is, I think, a fascinating genius of an author that's somewhat confusing, but I've read a lot of his books and find him pretty fascinating. So it's hard to nail down, but um, The Name of the Wind is a book that comes to mind, that is a beautiful storytelling book, and it is somewhat fantasy related. It's a very large book, but if you're not into large books, I still recommend the audiobook if you can get a hold of it. It's Patrick Rothfuss is the author, and he has a series. But yeah, very, very good stuff.
The Name of the Wind, did you say it was called?
Yes, yeah,
I remember that.
yeah.
So we've got a question here. I love the question before. Sorry, I forgot who asked. Do you use Oracle? And if so, what's your favorite Oracle deck?
I do use Oracle. I have a few that I really like. The UC deck, the Supra Oracle, I really enjoy that. That is one that I think is pretty amazing. Again, just that art style that we like from Pagan Otherworlds carried into the world of Oracle. I think that one's pretty amazing. And I keep the Woodland Wardens in my tarot go bag. I keep that one in there all the time. It's a beautiful aesthetic. And I didn't know if I would really resonate as much as I have been with animal oracles and things, but that one in particular I really enjoy.
Oh, cool. I can't believe I let Supra pass me by. I ummed and ahed about it, and I think at the time there were so many other decks that I was getting, and I was like, oh, I'll put it on a back burner. And yeah, but I think it's out of print now as well, isn't it?
I haven't been on their site in a while. It was probably, I want to say, maybe 7 or 8 months ago that I got it.
Okay.
So they may still have it. It may be a new printing that they're
Yeah.
selling off their website now. It's
It
worth a
could be.
try.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Do you have a favorite quote?
Ooh, do I? I don't have one that comes to mind immediately.
That's okay.
I have a bad memory for things like that. So if I don't have it written down in front of me, then forget it. And I would end up misquoting it somehow terribly, or I wouldn't know who to attribute it to.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's a question come in. Do you use other forms of divination, such as pendulums, runes, ogham, etc.?
I have a lot of interest in other forms, but I have not gone down any paths with real gusto. I have a big interest in crystals, but I have very little experience or knowledge. But it's something I'm interested in, and I'd like to continue to look at. I do have one pendulum that's it's a chakra pendulum that's it was sort of like formed out of, it's in layers. Actually, I think I have it on my table here. That it came with a set of crystals. Let's see if we can get.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so it is crystals, that were cut and formed. But again, not something I've used yet in that way. So I have an interest, and it's nice to have those out there, so that if I feel a lull at some point and I need something new, I have those at the ready, so I can start heading down that path.
And it's pretty easy to use a pendulum or a dowsing crystal, and you can use them with tarot as well. By hovering them over your cards for
True.
what should be more of a significant message. So the dinner party. One guest of honor and 2 other guests, dead or alive. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
So, guest of honor, I think, would have to be. I think my grandfather, who passed in the late '90s. His name was Sylvester, and he was my all-time favorite storyteller. I would just sit and listen to him for hours, and I couldn't get enough.
Wow.
And so he would be at the head of the table. But I think I would also invite Enrique Enriquez
Oh, really?
from the Tarology
Yeah, yeah.
documentary. Um, and I think that would be an interesting conversation. Um, boy, a third one. I have to pick a third one, huh? Hmm. I would say, um, hmm, actually, another relative. So someone who I suspect was into esoteric things in my family that in Appalachia that actually never got to have that conversation with her is a great aunt, Pauline. She was a little tiny little woman with the tiny little house on the hill in Appalachia, and just had this power to her. She was she it was incredible. Just her cooking and everything just had this intensity to it. But she was the sweetest little thing, and to have her at the table with my grandpa and with Enrique, it would be quite the eclectic mix. But I think it would be a pretty magnificent crew to sit down and chat with. I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to have. Well, there probably is at some way back in history, but to have a conversation with a relative that's had some kind of interest. So yeah, how cool. Um, and if you could go back to your 16-year-old self with all the knowledge you have now, what conversation would you have?
The first thing I think I would do is try to convey the lack of importance and guilt with things like organized religion and stuff like that. And it was such a powerful thing in my life um, that I always felt like there was something wrong with deviating in any way from certain things. And it's not. I rebelled as a teenager. I had fun. You know, it was, but I always maintained. But I was also a very good person. I didn't do anything that wrong. It was all just silly stuff. Um, and I would say that is something that I let torture me for a long time. Just the guilt over not adhering to a specific religious practice or anything like that. That I just I think I would let go of that, allow myself to engage a little more with that whimsy and other. You know, I kind of let go of things a little bit, just relax and enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, and it's a favorite. Oh, I often pop it up. Hashtag no guilt. We have
Yes.
to let that go because
Yes.
that can really do damage, can't it? So I'm with you on
Absolutely.
that one. I saw a question from Alicia. Does your wife get involved with tarot?
So far, no, but she's interested in herbs and a little bit of the green witchery sort of you know, that sort of thing. But it's all of it very much fascinates her. So she doesn't practice really, but she's extremely supportive and I think really gets a kick out of my interest in tarot and my enthusiasm for it as much as anything else. So I think I have enough enthusiasm for this to carry both of us down that path.
But
So
that's great that she's
yeah.
so supportive, isn't
Oh
it?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that
amazing.
makes it so much easier if you've got a partner that understands your passions and your interests. So
Absolutely.
that's great. Um, so what would you say tarot has taught? I know it's only been a year, but a year can be a long time, especially working with tarot. What would you say the tarot has taught you most about yourself?
It's given me it's given me sort of a key um, to allowing myself to pause and connect with things that before I would sort of try to rush past, or I would just push them aside and think, well, that's something I'll deal with later, or I'll just let it go and it'll be fine. Or, you sort of push these things away all the time. And that's part of being human, is just trying to get through. You put the blinders on and you just go. And that's a consequence of our modern lives too. And what tarot has allowed me to do is just stop every once in a while and engage with those things, and I can settle them, and
Yeah.
I can just be at peace with things that I would have otherwise maybe had just a little, I don't know, a little something that just I would have hung on to, or just bypassed in life. And this allows me to just sort of engage and live in the present.
Yeah. Brilliant. And as for your channel, where would you like to take your channel? Any plans coming up, or any ideas for it that you'd
I
like to
really, yeah, I do like doing the lives. I think one great benefit is there's no editing, and that's one of the things that I try in my regular videos, my pre-recorded stuff. I do try to do them in such a way that I don't have to do any editing, except for put an intro on and an outro, and that's it. Because it takes too much time. I just, I want to spend more time making content, less time trying to just niddle with it and get it out there. So lives are attractive because it's just once and done. It's going and you're done with it. So more lives, and then more of those tarot deep dives, the nerd outs, more on the just really getting into the symbolism.
Cool. Brilliant. I'll look forward to it. So are you ready to play paper plastic?
I'm ready.
Okay. So straight hits, whatever comes first. Paper or plastic?
Paper.
Oracle or tarot?
This one I'm going to cheat. All tarot is oracle, but not all oracle is tarot. So I'm going to say oracle because it encompasses everything.
Oh, you're the first person to say that of all the years I've been doing paper plastic. YouTube or Instagram?
YouTube.
Peanut butter or jelly?
Peanut butter.
I have to swap that round. I have to remember I'm talking to an American, so I say jelly. If I'm talking to somebody in the UK, it's jam.
I would know it from both, but
Oh,
maybe it's regional. I don't know.
Big parties or small gatherings?
Small gatherings.
Wait or Crowley?
Wait.
Bath or shower?
Shower.
Bordered or borderless?
Borderless.
Dark and creepy or rainbows and unicorns?
I'm so split on this one. I would say unicorns with a dark side. I don't know.
Oh, we say jam in Canada. That's good to know. Indie or mass?
Indie.
Tablet or PC?
Tablet.
Save or spend?
Spend.
Money or free time?
Free time.
Phone calls or FaceTime?
Phone calls.
Movies at home or in the cinema?
At home.
Large or small cards?
Large.
Life after death or total oblivion?
Life after death.
Early bird or night owl?
I am both, for sure.
You don't need a lot of sleep then.
I need it, but I don't get it.
Woodland forest or sandy beaches?
Woodland forest.
Toilet roll, over or under?
It's over. It is absolutely over. Now, I will grant an exception. Now, here's how I feel. In your own home, by all means, do whatever you like. But in a public place, if it's under, then there's a proximity to the wall that I'm uncomfortable with, and that there's just
I should know because I lived in America for a time, but a few Americans have said this, and I'm like, we have these devices that screw into the wall, and they're on an arm, and they stick out, and you can put your hand behind the roll and the wall. It's not against the wall.
Yes, I grant you that. In some cases, there's more space than others, but I would just prefer that there's a nice, clean perimeter between the wall and access to the roll. So I have to pick over.
That's all right. That's okay. All right. Well, I'm going to shuffle. I'm going to use the Aliman Tarot because I've been working with this since I got it early in the week. Whilst I'm shuffling the deck, is there a particular set of cards that's really captivating you at the moment and has your attention?
There are a few, as usual, but it's really funny that you say Ali Mantero because um, just before we came on, this showed up,
Oh, cool.
and it is a Simon Made Me Do It. And what I thought is that while you are shuffling, I'm gonna do my box opening here.
Hey. So have they released more then? Because
No, not yet.
how did you get it if it was a Simon made you do it?
This was an eBay find earlier in the week.
Ah,
After watching your walkthrough and a few others, yeah, I thought, well, I'm just gonna hunt it down. So that's what I did. So this is one that will be very soon, a common one for me to reach for. But really, one of the things that I've been enjoying is actually the two penny oracle.
okay.
And I think this is a Madame Clara deck, and this is actually a Simon Made Me Do It too. This is one that really has been just really enjoyable. I like the different depictions on the card, the different descriptions that come up that I think really do a nice job um, giving us some things to think about. The artwork is gorgeous. The feel of the cards, just incredible. The card stock on these is beautiful. It's that crispy linen. Just
Yeah.
has it's great to shuffle. Nice edging, and you can choose your color combinations. It's a very fun deck.
There's actually a 5-cent tarot card in the Alleyman's, but obviously it's not
Yes.
on the same card stock because they've all got this same card stock. But I was thinking about because I don't like well, I'm not gonna say I don't like it, but my least favorite card is the Emperor, but that wasn't
Mm.
an additional card. So I'm looking at some of my backups thinking, can I take an Emperor card out, one of them, and pop it into the
Good
Alleyman?
idea.
Gotta feel it, hasn't it? This jumped right out. I don't know if anybody saw that, but it went right out. I had to get down on the floor and pick it up. And it is, I had to look then and count them, but it's the 5 of Cups. So the 5 of Cups is about, it's about having regrets really and over lost opportunities. And if you do have those regrets over lost opportunities, then all is not lost, as you can see in this image with the two cups that remain up. We can't change the past. All we can do is learn from it. And maybe that lost opportunity, there was a very good reason for it, actually. So focus on the positive. Maybe the time wasn't right. Maybe you was in a different kind of headspace, or circumstances wouldn't have allowed it to be a smoother journey as you might have hoped. But opportunities come round again. So you can't change the past. Learn from the past. When the opportunity comes round again, you'll be in a better place. So don't focus on what is lost, what is gone, or what might have been, or what should have been. Instead, focus on you are where you are now, having had the experiences that you've had, but keep a positive mind frame because opportunities come around so many times. So always hold that in mind. Brian, thank you very much for your time today. It's
Thank
been
you.
an absolute joy to chat with you. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great.
Likewise.
So I appreciate you reaching out and coming on. And if you're here in the chat and you haven't subscribed to Blushing Nerd Tarot, Brian's channel, then please do, because you know, he's got a lot of love and affection for the community, and he's somebody I think that the community would certainly get behind. His content is great, to say how new he is to putting out content. The description below, if you're watching this back, has a link to Brian's channel anyway, so it's really easy just to click on it. If one of my mods wants to pop a link in as well, then please do, so that we can give you that love and support and a sub.
Thank you.
Yeah, and other than that, thank you to the mods for moderating in the amazing way that you do. Thank you for everybody for their questions. Really appreciated them. And Brian, thank you for your time. Anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Just want to again extend a big thanks to everybody in the community for such a warm welcome so far, and it's been amazing. So everything I dreamed it could be and more, being new to the content creation, everybody's been welcoming with open arms. So thank you very much.
And that's really good to know that as well. It's nice to hear that people are coming into the community and feeling that love and support. So if you just stay on at the end after the titles, I'll have a quick chat with you. Thank you everybody for being here. Have a fantastic weekend. Whatever you do, wherever you go, stay safe. And until next time, go in peace. Namaste and blessed be.